Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everybody. It's Paula, Edgar, host of Branding Room Only, where I talk to industry leaders, professionals about their brands, what their reflections are about personal brands, and also advice they may have about personal branding. And I'm super, super excited to talk to my newest BFF, Zabrina Jenkins, today. Let me tell you a little bit about Zabrina. She is a distinguished corporate strategist and legal expert, currently serving as executive advisor to the Office of the Chief Executive Officer at Starbucks. Renowned for her dynamic role in shaping global brands, her extensive background includes pivotal leadership positions within Starbucks and a legal career marked by significant contributions to brand evolution. Her expertise in corporate governance, diversity, and brand integrity positions her as a key voice in contemporary brand strategy. Welcome to the Branding Room.
Oh, thank you, Paula.
I am super, super excited. From the moment that I met you, I had a chance to connect with you. I was like, I need to have her on my podcast. And so again, with setting intentions and having it is happening right now. So I'm super excited. Welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. I am doing great. I have to say, I am so overwhelmed by the opportunity to be here with you today. I am just so touched by this. So thank you. I'm doing great.
Well, it's a mutual love club over here. All right, let's get into it. Tell me what personal brand means to you. How do you define it?
Yeah, I define it as sort of how you present yourself, and it's a reflection of your values and pretty much what do you want to be known for. To me, that's what your brand, your personal brand is about.
I love it. I love it. All right, so that being said, and how would you describe yourself in 3 words or phrases?
In 3 words or phrases, I would describe myself as an extroverted introvert who cares and feels deeply for my family, my friends, and the people that are in my circle, people that I leave, and I thrive to be a solution finder. And that's really, I think, how I sum up what my brand is about.
Solution finder. I love that. I love that. Okay. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
I do. And this is something that I grew up with from my father. My father was an Air Force retired colonel, and something that he told me and my siblings for as long as I can remember is, the best doesn't come easy. That's why there's nothing else like it. And so that's a quote that I have reflect back on whenever I'm struggling with something or I'm trying to achieve something, and I need that motivation to kind of keep going. It's you need to, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. So put the time in to try and be successful.
I love that. I love that. It's like striving for excellence, right? It's that understanding of resilience for excellence. That is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you have a hype song? So something that when they're going to get full on Zabrina with a Z, they know that's a song that's playing? Or
Absolutely.
It's something to kind of pick you up if you're feeling down. What's that song? Or
the song, well, I've got several, but I would say the one that stands out for me right now is Shining by DJ Khaled with Beyonce and Jay-Z. And I love the refrain in the lyrics where, and I can't sing, so I'm not going to even try to sing the part, but the lyrics are, don't try to slow me down. And so whenever I need to be hyped, I think about that song, I play that song, and it definitely, the beat's great. I love music, so the beat is great, but the lyrics really speak to me.
I love that. Okay, so you already alluded to growing up as a daughter of, as someone who was in the Air Force, as a pilot and living in all these states because of that. How did that help influence your upbringing and sort of how you approach the world?
Yeah, well, we grew up, I'm the youngest of 3, and I was born in Maryland. My dad was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base, and he worked at the Pentagon, and then we moved to Hawaii, and we moved to California, and then we moved to Washington State. And I would say that setting, that my upbringing really taught me early on how to be around people of different races, different backgrounds, and different cultures, and friends who, were Korean and Filipino and people who looked like us, people who didn't look like us. And so it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about different cultures. And it also taught me a lot about working to be outgoing and to be resilient. And as I mentioned in sort of my, how do I describe myself? I actually am an introvert. And one thing that having a military background where you are living in different places, you're having to meet new people, and you learn how to go into a room and to start a conversation and to start talking to people, even if that's not your natural inclination, but it's kind of a survival thing. Otherwise, you don't survive and you don't make friends. And so that upbringing really kind of influenced who I am as a person.
I love that reflection about that, because I don't think I always say that introverts they rule the world. People think that because we're loud, and I was like, we meaning I as extroverts, that it's not. It's that introverts are so much more strategic, right? Yeah. Like they don't want to do it, so they're going to do it. Like, let's get it done. Is what I got to get done. And I think that it is a much more powerful stance, particularly in relationship building, to be introverted in the thought of that your focus. I sort of say to myself sometimes, I'm like a butterfly. I'm like, I'm a flower, the flower, the flower, the flower. Introverts are like, I want the rose and I want the daisy, and that's it. I'm good. I'm good. What island were you on in Hawaii? Were you stationed on Hawaii?
We were stationed at Hickam Air Force Base on Oahu.
My husband is a Marine, so
I did not know that.
So he was like, I can always say it wrong. Can I hi? I'm gonna get in trouble anyway. So yes, it tells a long story, but anyway, I have the Hawaii, California connection because I also lived in California. I lived in Orange County when I would say growing up, because yes, it was when I was growing up, but not when I was a kid. It's definitely growing up. Okay, so talk to me about now how all of that, the growing, the sort of learning and connecting. As somebody who went to a lot of different places and experienced a lot of different people, how did that then fuse into you becoming an attorney and taking it from law firm life to in-house and now being the business side, advising the CEO, the office of the CEO? Tell me that.
Yes. Well, I guess I'll start by saying I've always had an interest in going to law school. Growing up, people said I was argumentative, I'd be a great lawyer. And so that kind of stuck with me. And actually, as I learned more about the law, I realized that it was the opportunity to continue to learn that really attracted me to law school. And so when I graduated from Syracuse, I was fortunate to have an offer from a law firm in Seattle and joined that firm back in 2000. And I was in my fourth year of practice when one of my mentors reached out to me to tell me that Starbucks was going to have its first junior level litigation position. And I honestly had not thought about going in-house at that point in time in my career. I thought you kind of had to spend a lot of time in-house and then make that transition when you were a partner. But this opportunity was presented to me and I need to look into it and kind of seize the opportunity. And I was familiar with the brand, having lived in Washington, but it wasn't Starbucks as it is today. We had 7,000 stores. There were 200,000 employees, and our legal department was a little over 100. But I came in, got the job, and came in to oversee the company's premises liability cases, so all the lawsuits that were filed against our stores. And just over the course of my time with the company continued to grow, and I would say the department primarily kind of stayed a little lean, so it presented opportunities for us to go into different spaces. And so while I started just to oversee the store litigation, it led to commercial litigation, and then I just continued to increase my responsibilities. When we acquired our tea business, I took a stretch assignment and went to Atlanta and moved to Atlanta to work for Tivana. And that one, I will say, was a huge learning opportunity for me in terms of building my confidence. I will admit that when the role was first posted, I thought, oh, they're looking for a transactional lawyer, kind of self-selected out on that, and was thankful to have a great manager, mentor who said, no, you need to put your name in for this. This would be a great opportunity for you. And he was right. And I ultimately, it was a competitive process. I was selected, and it was my first opportunity to really work on the business side, serving on the leadership team of that newly acquired business. That then led to an assignment where I moved back to Seattle and started leading the litigation team. From there, I was promoted. I took on a vice president role with litigation and employment. And we had a sudden departure of our chief ethics and compliance officer, so I was asked to take on that role as well. And then the next promotion came through, and some changes within the organization structurally, and I was promoted to senior vice president and assigned as the general counsel for Roz Brewer when she was our chief operating officer, which I will say honestly was one of the best experiences I have had in my career, hands down. And then most recently, when Howard Schultz returned as our interim CEO, he made some changes within the leadership team as well and asked me to be his general counsel. And so I served in that role for about 18 months. And when our new CEO came in, he made some changes as well and brought in a new general counsel, and I transitioned to the executive advisor role to his office and our office's strategy, public affairs, and legal. So that's kind of my journey, kind of in a nutshell. There's some peaks and valleys in that time where there are things where I put myself out there and I didn't get the role. Other times I was asked to do something and I didn't really think it was something that I wanted to do, but wanted to be a team player and certainly learn the value of learning something different in that process. And it just has led to this interesting career where I went from the most junior position to the most senior position in the legal department. And I've been with the company for a little over 18 years.
I mean, obviously you're talking about it. It's like, oh, la, la, that's what I did. And I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, every single time you said the change, I was like, I'm so scared. I'm scared about that. That's scary. So tell me if you think that this is a good explanation of you. It sounds to me very much like you have a growth mindset, like you understand, right? That even if it feels a little scary, that you can go ahead and do it and learn something from the process. Is that right? Because I'm scared, and I'm like, I don't know.
And so what I'll also add to that is most of those changes, with the exception of my first two moves from corporate counsel to director, came as a result of someone leaving. And so I didn't have the transition. I didn't have I just had to go in. That's why I honestly do consider myself a solution finder, because I learned to get in there. And it hasn't always been just kind of my natural inclination or my comfort zone. There is a diagram, it's sort of a GIF, I guess it is, that I keep on my phone, and I share it with people, and I reflect on it myself because I often have to be reminded myself. But there's a small circle that says your comfort zone, and then there's a big circle that says where the magic happens. Ooh. And I love that because you do have to get out of your comfort zone to really try to capitalize on the magic. And it's not easy. I mean, I trust me, every time I'm just like, am I supposed to can I do this? But each time you gain a little more confidence and you understand, I made it through this. I can pull on my resources, my experience. That's the other thing I guess I would say is it's, not going at it alone, knowing that there are people who are out there who can support you, and not being afraid to ask for help is something that has helped me throughout my career.
First of all, you're going to need to send me that, Jeff, because I need it.
I will gladly. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like it's
the first thing. And I'm like a little bit taken aback. I'm really speechless, but I'm having a moment because it's almost like, what am I trying to say? When you think about what we want, what we say we want, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure when you walk through, whatever that Starbucks store was that first day, and you were like, I'm here, I made it. Like I moved from the hard part, which was the law firm. Right. And then to go from, could you have even forecasted Like and that's what I mean. It's like I'm pulling this out and stopping here because I want the folks who are listening to really get that so often people think that there's this like linear journey.
Yeah.
And it's so not. And sometimes even what we think we want, we don't even know. And so
Right.
being open to opportunity, whether it's by will or skill, is a good
Right.
it's a good
Right.
thing. I am
Right.
inspired. I'm like, what can I do this hard today? I'm gonna get to that magic spot. That's great. Well, I mean, you kind of answered the next question. So I want to jump into talking about another role that's leadership that you have, which is being an independent board member for the
Mm-hmm.
Retail Opportunity Investments Corp and other board roles. Tell me about how corporate governance and being in leadership sort of not work, but work
Mm-hmm.
shapes what you do, how to use your skill set towards that, and how that impacts your brand.
Yeah. Well, I guess to answer your last question, it definitely impacts my brand. Period. I mean, you go from some level of anonymity to kind of putting yourself out there in a public way, and so that's become part of my brand as well. And I don't take that for granted. I hold that very dear. I recognize that it's also not just about me, that I'm representing a number of other constituents. Quite frankly, I'm representing other people who look like me. I'm representing, my employer. I'm representing the other organizations that I'm affiliated with. And so I've learned a lot just from serving on both uh, civic organizations and public boards. And I'm a trustee for Central Washington University. I would say that's the one where I probably I acutely feel that I am a public figure because all the meetings are publicly held open by state law.
Wow.
And so, yes. And so if we're good or for bad, I mean, but it's a constant reminder that it's not just about me and that the brand and how I show up, again, to how I defined a personal brand is really important. So it's helped me in being thoughtful in terms of how I present, how I speak, how I look. I should mention growing up, dad and my uncle had this, used to get lots of different pieces of advice. And I found, as I was preparing for this, I found something that I had when I was growing up, which said what my dad and my uncle would always say. Remember the 3 A's to success: appearance, attitude, and assertiveness. And so I think about that just in terms of what does it mean to serve on a public board? What does it mean to serve on any sort of board? And my brand, appearance is important, and your attitude is really important, and certainly your assertiveness, because you're being asked to serve in a certain role, and sometimes you need to kind of get out there and get into some things. So that's what I would say, just to kind of summarize how my experience has been.
I think that is so profound. First of all, I'm definitely stealing the the 3 A's. So there's that with attribution. But when I think about this, because I'm also on a lot of boards, not public boards yet, yet.
Yep, put that on there.
Right, exactly. That's going to be on my vision board too. But I definitely am. I'm a definite bar association board, all of these other things, and I do think very deeply about like the what I do. Right.
Yeah.
The fun Paula and the not so fun Paula, all of the Paula is aligned with other brands. And you in particularly, like, right, you're aligned with big brands, like, right, and significant brands. And that there is being reflective about is important, right? Because people are not necessarily, and this is much to my chagrin, aren't necessarily as thoughtful enough as to separate the person from the things.
Yes.
Right. And so they will be like, that person from insert organization here did this thing versus the person. So,
well, I will tie that back to just my upbringing as well. I mean, you can appreciate that with my father being a Black Air Force officer and who went on to become a colonel in the Air Force. As children, we knew that what we did was a reflection of him. And he made it very clear to us that, we couldn't do certain things. We couldn't act a certain way. We couldn't behave a certain way out there, in the streets, because that would shine, a poor negative light on him and his career. And so that whole concept of branding and being an ambassador and people seeing you beyond just who you are as a person has been something that I've grown up with.
We have that in common. I am the daughter of immigrants, Barbados and Jamaica, respectively. And what my parents would tell me often was, do not embarrass us.
Yes.
Don't go outside of that. So not as eloquent maybe as your father said, but my mother would tell me there's a baseline, speaking of a parents, on how you go outside. Like, you can't have ashy lips. that was like a big deal. My mother, like, why are you outside ashy? And so I think we definitely have that in common. And thinking about it, and I have a daughter who is a freshman in college, Spelman College, shout out.
Yes.
And I try to align with her all the time to say, like, I know it feels like a pressure, but it's hard to say because, as the parent, kids don't want to hear you. But I also know that whether or not it's what we want, people do judge you by how you show up. And so I often, particularly with, people of color and folks from underrepresented groups, I don't want to say conform. So that's not the thing, right? But it is to be very thoughtful about how you show up. And to align where it makes sense, and then to differentiate where it makes sense for you too. Right. So that is fabulous. Okay, so tell me this. How do you, and I hate the word balance, actually trying to balance something, but how do you navigate all of your different roles at work and in your, the volunteerism and all of these other pieces and kind of just being you? How do you balance all of that, if you wouldn't call it balance? Navigate. Yeah,
well, it's not without a lot of thought. I mean, and intention, and I have to say it. I'm not always good at it, but it's all about kind of values as well. I mean, I've always said family first, that end stop, like that's, and then keeping that sort of at the forefront and keeping that centered, then you think about, okay, well, where do I have space for other things, and how do I need to prioritize, and balancing your priorities with really knowing your limits as well, and then surrounding yourself with people who will add value to your life. And going again back to sort of my upbringing and some information that was always shared with us. My uncle used to circulate to us the ground rules for developing a good value system and setting goals. And I was looking again at it this morning. Number 6 is, select your friends with care. When selecting your friends, even your mate for life, take a close look at their value system. Where do they want to go in life? What is their goal? This is very important. You can never reach your greatest potential if you pick the wrong mate or friends. And so that's something that was ingrained in me sort of early in terms of your circle. And so I would say by extension, I think about that in terms of all the things that I am involved with. I'm selective. I'm not going to just give my time if I'm not passionate about it and it's not something that I can do well. And they have a meaningful, and by well, I mean having a meaningful impact. I'm not trying to profess that I need to be a perfectionist at anything, but certainly it's important to make sure that you are spending your time in ways that provide value to you and that you feel like you're being impactful. And so that's, I think, how I best balance all of my priorities and my engagement in different organizations. And sometimes I just have to say no, because it's either something that I know I can't give my time to because I'm at my limit, or it's not something that I'm really that passionate about, and know that perhaps someone else will give more to that particular organization.
That is such a good lens. First of all, you're gonna have to share the list. Like, just go ahead and go through everything that your uncle and your dad gave you and just send it to me in a box. Thanks.
It is absolutely on like a typewriter type font. Like that's
like, okay, I need it. It's so clutch. And I often will talk to people about their personal board of directors or have you. But I say have one, but also remember that for every board, there should be term limits.
Yes.
And you should be reflecting on how people add value for the folks because I have pruned people and put them into advisory status. I have said, I need you to be more present, right? It's really a thoughtful thing. As you know, like every year I am very intentional about what I want to do and who I want to do it with. But even more so, I think as I get older and as I really think about what my impact and what my legacy is going to be, I don't have time to waste. Right? I'm like, time is literally, I can't give that back. So I feel very honored when I spend time with people who bring me joy.
Yes.
Because everybody knows it's my word of the year. But really, if I don't feel joy from it, or if I don't feel I'm going to have impact, then I'm not servicing myself properly.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm 100%.
And my word for the year is focused, because I find that I get a little distracted and it's easy to kind of have some of that noise creep in and you lose sight of things. So for me, it's focused.
I love that as a thing. And I have started to kind of incorporate some reflection questions in order for me to decide, like if somebody says, Paula, can you do XYZ thing for this year? And I shift the top question each year. I've been building this list for a while, but the first question this year is, will this bring me joy? And I can tell you, we're like beginning of the year. There's been several things where I'm like, oh, that's not going to work for me. You know what? In light of the priorities that I have this year, I'm unable to take on that aspect. Like, and it feels so authentic and good. And I don't feel bad about it because I'm not just saying yes or no. I'm saying I'm thoughtful about it. And that's important.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So tell me about mentors. Have you had any through your career? Tell me how they impacted you.
Oh my goodness. Have I had, I've had I'm so blessed to have had so many. And I will tell you again, kind of bring it to my father. When I left for college, so I'm very fortunate to have my father really give us a lot of sound advice. And one of the things that he said when I left for college and shared the same with my siblings is he told me that I needed to get a godfather. And I didn't know exactly what he was speaking about at the time. I now understand that today's modern definition of a mentor. But what he said was, you need to get a godfather when you get to school, someone who can look out for you, someone who can answer questions for you, can kind of support you and give you guidance while you're on campus. And so that concept of mentorship started with me early on. And what that has led to is sort of the same thing that you've said in terms of some have time limits, some are situational, some are, they will forever be on my board of directors because they just are in a place where there's someone that I want to emulate. And, one thing that, and when you get that list that I share with you, number is look for mentors, someone that you can emulate, mentors who are larger than life, expand us, and mentors in different fields broaden us. And yes, and so that thought that mentorship and sponsorship, I think, are incredibly important. And I would not have the career that I've had or had the experiences that I've had without having both mentors and sponsors. And it's just honestly something that I am grateful for, to continue to build those relationships. And I think it's also important with mentorship to know that they don't necessarily need to look like you, that you learn a lot just from people who are different from you, but may have had an experience that you either want to emulate or learn from.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The larger first of all, this list is like fire right now. Like, this is the list. But I think a larger in life, I always say, like, Oprah is like a mentor in my head, right? Like, so yes, I have met her, but only to the side and just a wave.
Don't you try to downplay that. You met her.
I'm like, it was just a little bit of a meet, but it was still, that's okay. Because one day she's going to be on this podcast and y'all going to say, remember what you said? It's all good.
We're going to set that intention right now.
Exactly that. Somebody tell somebody. But it is such a powerful thing when somebody says, I'm investing in you.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I do a lot of training and education, primarily at law firms, about mentor and how to appropriately mentor. And what I find people mess up on this all the time is they want to create mini-me's as opposed to whoever guiding the person to what they want to be, right? And
Right.
it's like, yes, I don't want to go over that pothole. That's what I want you to tell me, that the pothole is there, but I don't want to be in the same car as you.
Right, exactly. Don't clone yourself.
Exactly. And it's a lot of that spaces. And a lot of folks will tell me, oh, well, that person can't mention me because they don't know me, they're not like me. And I go, we have to learn everybody.
Right.
Because every person who we connect with, whether they look like you or not, whether you think they're the same, you have to still learn them. And so giving folks the grace of, like, I think with every human being I've met, it's 3 questions until I figure out something we have in common, right? Right? It's us perceiving our difference, but we realize really, really quickly that we have a lot more in common than we have that separates us.
Right.
And if people would just get that, it would be so much better. That's a whole nother podcast. Okay. So that being said, what advice would you give to somebody who is trying to navigate their personal brand and in a corporate environment?
Well, I think one, for starters, again, just the importance of mentorship and sponsorship. My dad used to always say, I broke down the door, don't go to the next door, walk behind me. And so keeping that sort of spirit in mind, look to people who have had that experience, who are in a place where you want to go in your corporate setting. And I think it's incredibly important. I mean, as I shared at the outset when you asked me about my career journey, I'm here because I had a mentor who called me and said, Starbucks is going to have a position. I think you'd be great here. And do I think it's because even subconsciously, while I wasn't working on it, he understood, that I cared about my brand and I was a good reflection of him as he referred me? Absolutely, I think that's the case. So I would say that anyone who's kind of starting out, keep that in mind, and build those relationships and understand that building the relationship is going to take time. Those things don't happen necessarily overnight, and that they should be authentic. I think sometimes people look at building relationships as something that they want to do simply from a transactional perspective, and it's to help them kind of move them to wherever they're trying to go. And while that's a piece of it, there does need to be some reciprocity in the relationship. And so taking it away from just simply being transactional to, approaching someone who you want to emulate and just asking them, interested to learn about your journey and how can I learn from you, and what can how can I offer something in response, I think is important. I think the other thing, particularly in a corporate setting, it's important to be a team player and a collaborator. I think that's how people ultimately succeed in the corporate setting. My experience has been you don't actually ultimately get ahead by having sharp elbows and cutting people out. Like that stuff always comes back at some point in time. So you're better off working collaboratively with people, putting people up as well, and supporting people. I think it's critically important.
I mean, yes to all of that. Is it something that you have made a priority because of the experience that you've had to also give those things back to other people? Is that a part of your leadership sort of ethos as well?
Absolutely. And I will say, I do believe fundamentally it is ingrained in me. I come from a long legacy of family members who have given back and understand the importance of paying it forward. And for me, it's also personally gratifying. Like I mentioned earlier that I'm a solution finder. I like thinking through issues. I like being able to help someone, not to get into gospel, but the song, if I can help somebody, then my journey will not be in vain. And that's something my dad used to sing in our house as I was growing up, and something that his mother sang in their house. And I truly do believe that it is important to give back and to help others. And again, I personally find it personally gratifying to do that. So I try to do it as much as I can, and be honest about really, sometimes I can't give people as much time as I want to, but I will always make time, even if it's just a few minutes, because it's important just for people to know that they are being seen and heard.
Yes. People want to be fairly
Yeah.
treated and heard. All right. So tell me about the fun stuff.
Where do we start?
What do you do for fun?
Um, I do a lot of things for fun. I know it sounds very try. I love having fun. Like, really,
We have that
like
in common.
that is so important to me. So from anything to, I love sports. I'm a huge sports fan. I love playing sports. I actually, believe it or not, still play basketball. I played collegiately, and it's still, a little slower than I used to, than I once was, but I still consider myself somewhat of a baller.
I love it.
I love being outdoors, like skiing, golfing, boating. I have my captain's license. I actually can drive a boat, skipper a boat, like travel, adventure, love music, love going to concerts. Went to some great concerts this year. Tony, when they were at CCWC in DC, went to that concert. So, yeah, love to do things and love adventure, love spontaneity. Like, let's go.
And you're not just gonna drop it off like you have your captain's license. You're not just gonna drop it and think I'm gonna say like, okay, fine. What?
Well, there's a story behind that.
There must be a story. I'm like, I need to hear more.
Behind that. Well, one, my dad grew up in Alabama. He used to fish all the time, and he, before my parents got married, he had like a small boat that he used to tow behind his car, and that was kind of like his guilty pleasure was to go out and go fishing. And so I grew up with him, always wanting to go out fishing and so on. But the boat thing came as a result of some self-reflection that I was just not spending enough time on Zabrina. And I decided that if I did something like get my boating license, and I have a friend who has a boat, and that I would then spend more time out on the water. And so that's what I did. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to study up and get my boating. I took a course to do a double engine diesel 36 footer. And yeah, so that was kind of like, why not?
I am telling you, as much as I have conversations with people, I always feel like blessed that something tells me to say something and ask something that gets me to the thing, because like, y'all, you should see my face. And I'm like, number one, my cheeks are like, I'm like smiling so much. But I love that, because that gives me another aspect of your brand that we might not have gotten to the question, right? To even be the biggest piece of branding is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And it is so true. Like, to be able to understand who you are and, more importantly, what you need is a really, 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 I mean, I think that if leaders did that more, we would be in a much better space. I love that for you. And we are definitely going out on the boat.
You come to Seattle.
Hopefully, can we do it in the Caribbean? I mean, that part. Okay. So I asked the same two questions to everybody on my podcast. Mm-hmm. One is this. Is to stand by your brand. Like, what aspect of your brand will you never compromise?
My integrity. Will never compromise. It's not worth the risk. And I grew up with the belief that you do the right thing. And I very fortunate that when I joined the company here, the manager that I had, I will never forget when he was telling me about doing the job. He said, ultimately, you need to do the right thing. And I was like, this is the right decision I made, because this is what I grew up with. And it's something that I share with everyone who asks me about leadership and how do you handle different situations. And it's kind of always been my North Star. So the thing that I won't ever compromise on is, quite frankly, my integrity. I think that it's so important to who I am as a person. I
love that. Okay, second one is your branding room only moment. So branding room only is a play on standing room only. And so what is your magic, the thing that people will come into a room and they'll be standing room only to experience about you?
I think it's just my overall disposition. I'm pretty even-keeled. I'm calm under pressure. I don't really get
Wow, I am so happy that I had a chance to talk to you about who you are, and that more importantly, the folks will be able to hear who you are, a little bit more about who you are. And thank you so much for being in the branding room with me. This has been a delightful conversation. Everybody, tell everybody to listen to this podcast episode.
I listen, the fact that you've even given this opportunity, I am just so grateful for. So trust and believe. I will be sharing it with others.
Fantastic. Everybody, talk to you soon. And Zabrina, you're welcome to come back to the branding room anytime.
I would love that. Thank you, Paula.